July. So I'm so excited to talk with you today, Jacqui.
I'm excited.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun because I know you've probably got a ton of insights and perspectives and hacks and all sorts of things. I've been out of the administrative professional world, like literally, because I used to be an admin professional when I first started my career many moons ago. So I know how hard you work. I say that admin professionals kind of like almost like nurses in a way. It's like the unsung heroes of the business world and so far what you do. So I can't wait to sort of dive in and give people some insights on exactly what it is that you do. So I'm going to introduce you. Jacqui Prospero, did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. You're an executive virtual assistant, the winner of the 2019 Canadian Administrative Professional of the Year. Your focus and specializations surround supporting professionals and organizations with administration, governance, communication, event, and project management. And here we go through the laundry list of all of your accolades and your academia. So you hold a Bachelor of Arts from York University, a special event management with honors, a healthcare management diploma, a conflict and alternative dispute resolution diploma, a Six Sigma Lean Yellow Belt certification, a leadership and administration certificate, and a certified administrative professional designation with specialization in organization management. So that's why you have CAPOM as your accreditations after your name.
Correct. Yeah.
And so as I said, and also in addition to that other award that you won of the 2019 Canadian Administrative Professional of the Year, you're recognized as the Canadian Administration Professional of the Year so I've already said that one. And you were a finalist for the 2019 Executive PA Awards for North America. So yay!
2019 was an exciting year before COVID arrived, of course, but 2019 was a very exciting year.
Yeah, and I bet you, Jacqui, a lot of people don't even think about. I didn't even know there were awards. I didn't know there were admin professional awards. So I'm so glad to see somebody like yourself, not only winning, but having the courage to apply for it. Because I'm sure that a lot of admins probably don't even apply for the award because they don't even know that it's there. So.
You're so right. Sometimes we as administrative professionals, we get in our own way. We're so used to being in the Wizard of Oz and the guy behind the curtain, right? Yeah. Who's pulling the strings and making things happen. And we just make sure everything looks good on the outside and everything runs smoothly. And very rarely do we ever stick our head out of the curtain and kind of go, hey, look at me. Right? I can do this. So yeah, every once in a while it takes someone else to kind of give you a little kick in the butt and say, you're good at what you do. I'm going to apply for this for you. I'm going to recommend you. I'm to do something nice for you, to help you recognize your value.
Right. Yeah.
It can be challenging sometimes, but every once in a while somebody comes along and pats you on the back and says, you're good. You can do this.
100%. And that's the reason why I started this whole sort of blog. I don't know if you call this a podcast or a little chat show. I don't even know what to call it yet. But this is why I started it, was because I recognize that so many of my clients, they are in their own way. And I will say over and over again, when you're inside the jar, you can't see the label.
That's my favorite tagline. My favorite one.
Yeah, because it's so true. And admin professionals, to your point, are the people that sort of are behind the scenes making the executives look amazing. And almost every executive I have ever met will say, thank God for my admin professional, because I couldn't do it without them. And it's so true, but they might not necessarily get the same, the same sort of, their name isn't sort of on the billboard the same way that the executives are. So Miss Amy Riddell is saying hello. So Amy is... that's probably how we met, was through Amy's events with the administrative professional conferences. So Amy is my hub. She has friends everywhere, and thank God for her, because I wouldn't have met you otherwise. So so today we're here to talk a little bit about organizational hacks, outsourcing, and really the value of what an admin, not just an admin professional, because I think some people have some kind of an idea what an admin professional does. Probably not as much. You do more than what people think you do.
Always. And I think every admin is the same way.
Yeah, so
every admin is different. Not every admin does the same thing, and never mind the same way. but you know, it's such a diverse group of people when you look at the skill sets and the requirements in different industries and different jobs around the world.
Yeah, and so what is a big misconception about either admin, not just admin professionals, but like virtual admin professionals, all those kinds of things? I'm sure that there's a lot of misconceptions about what it is that you do.
So probably the biggest misconception for of virtual assistance is you don't have to be in the same time zone, in the same country, in the same province, state, city, region to do what I do for the people that I work for. My primary client right now is for a large technology company, and he is positioned in California, just outside San Francisco. And I'm in Ontario, Canada. So I'm in a different country and I'm 3 time zones away. And for us, it works. It works really well for us. I have clients that are in Ottawa, Ontario, and are in Stratford, Ontario. I've had clients in New York, in the UK. And it's all about what can you do that fits their need. And in my case, I'm flexible with hours based on my personal living accommodations and what I'm doing in my own life. And you're not doing it all the time. You know, some of my clients come and go. One of my clients gave me one of the biggest compliments. And I worked for her for about 9 months. She was an Ottawa-based client. And I started working about 35 hours a week. And that got down to the point where I was only doing about 2 hours a week worth of work. And we sat down and said, so you know what? You've worked yourself out of a job. I don't need you anymore. And I was excited about that. I was like, this is great. You know, you brought me in, I came in, I did what you needed to be done, and I am happy to tie it in a bow, give it back and say, here you go. Right? So that's probably the biggest misconception for virtual. For admins in general, sometimes I think that what goes on in social media and in the entertainment realm, people have this misconception about what secretaries do and what administrative support people do and what they're capable of. Several of my colleagues have certifications out the wazoo, Microsoft Office wide, not just, you know, a CAP or an they have their MBAs, they have their masters. You know, it's quite interesting to see the diversification of qualifications, and everybody has their niche, right? Everybody is exceptionally good at one thing and really good at a lot of things. And you play to those. And a lot of people don't realize that we don't answer phones anymore for our executives, right? I'm still booking calendar appointments. It's just all done electronically. And now it's even easier because we're using programs to help us with scheduling. But at my level, it's not just about adding another appointment to the calendar to keep an executive busy or a client occupied. It's about being strategic about it. You know, is this person traveling? Is there downtime? Will they take phone calls while they're driving? Do they want peaceful, quiet time at the airport before a flight? You know, things like that. Those are all those little things that, do I want to do this? And does the person I'm supporting want me to do it too? So
there's a lot of nuanced things that you're doing that people don't, that again, to that misconception is that, you know, that the madman's secretary is certainly the days gone by of those days. And it's interesting that you say that because a friend of mine, also named Jacqui, sent me a post this morning, and the post for the job posting that was on LinkedIn was for a chief of staff. And as I went through it and I was looking for the requirements of the role, I was like, wow, yeah, that chief of staff, it sounds like an admin professional. It sounds like somebody who would be an ally, an alliance, an ally, not a, you know, another touch point, another perspective, a resource for an executive from that perspective. And I was like, that, I just think the chief of staff sounds like, yeah, because like that's exactly, you're an advisor even in a lot of ways.
They're quite similar, and depending on the industry you're in, most chiefs of staff aren't permanent full-time employees for years on end. They're usually someone who comes in for an 18-month to 2-year time frame where they're coming in to help a large department in a global organization or a decent-sized company restructure and change the way that they're doing their business. And they need somebody to kind of be that go-to. That person is, of course, excessively detail-oriented, but they're usually not managing the executive's calendar or managing their executive's email, right? They're more about dealing with all the people the executive deals with and helping them work around through the changes that are coming, whether it's structural or organizational, or they're, wanting to change their culture or something. It's usually a limited time frame. There are a lot of admins that want to make that step to chief of staff. Chief among them is because it's a huge pay grade difference compared to what many administrative professionals make, but it is definitely a niche skill set. Lots of project management skills, lots of budgeting, finance, huge emotional intelligence skills, and being able to deal with a wide and diverse group of people and their needs and wants. Because a lot of people in big companies are trying to build their own empire in their own little department, right? And sometimes you have to help them get past that and see the bigger picture of why you're coming in to help them redo things. So it's a really interesting role. Lucy Brazier from Executive Secretary Magazine talked to me about it a few years ago, and she gave a presentation and she said, about a third of admin professionals at the C-level, supporting C-level executives, can make that step, but they all need some help in getting there. And part of that is having someone who can champion them and help them and even mentor them to make that leap, because it is a big change from you're working with a primary executive and you're basically running that person's business life to helping a larger, broader group of people understand the bigger picture and connect the pieces and try your best to not get too into the weeds, but to stay high level enough that you can help bring people together for that big conversation.
Oh, thanks for that. Thanks for that delineation, because the idea is a little more strategic, I guess, with the chief of staff. Mm-hmm. And while administrative professionals do absolutely do strategic work, it's on a different, it's in a different perspective for sure.
Absolutely. And with one of my clients, I work very closely with the chief of staff they have right now, because the department has gone through a huge organizational change, 1,600 people spread around the world, and hiring new people at the vice president and a higher level, reporting into the C-level executive, and restructuring all those people. You need an extra set of hands and an extra set of eyes to keep all those projects moving forward on timelines. And the chief of staff is definitely that.
That's cool. Okay, thanks for that, because that does certainly help reframe in my brain the difference between the two. For me, as like somebody who I have been admin professional, it wasn't my wheelhouse because, quite frankly, I'm not as organized as one. One really has to love organization, and my organization is sort of a mishmash. It's not really very linear. I love online, and so. But I also, as a chief cook and bottle washer, for my own company, how would someone be able to start to delegate to a virtual admin professional? How could somebody like myself go, okay, so I can hand some of this stuff over when I've been doing it all myself?
A lot of it comes down to trust and comfort. Even if you're working full-time for someone, your relationship with that primary person you're supporting is all about trust. And it goes both ways. And especially when it comes to being a VA with clients, you need to build that trust because you're getting passwords and access to LinkedIn profiles and social media accounts. Are you helping them manage email? Are you booking travel for them? Any number of things a VA can help someone like you. It's a matter of, what do I do that I, A, don't enjoy, or B, is not worth my time? I quite often say to C-level executives, we pay you X number of dollars an hour at your level, and we pay me Y number of dollars at my level. It is more cost efficient to pay me to do your expenses than it is to pay you to do your expenses. And some of them are they're like, I don't know if I want to, give up, credit card access and, receipts and, all these things. It's like, really? We're going to waste, either your own company's money or another company's money paying you how many hours every week or 2 weeks to do your own expenses when you could pay me? And so that's part of that trust thing, right? You have to trust someone that you're going to give them your online credit card access information. You're going to give them access to the company's portal for expense payment processing, and they'll go in and do everything for you. And it really is a trust. It really is a trust thing.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's a trust within myself. Can I allow someone else to take over that? Because I do. I have a bookkeeper now because I don't want to do that. not organized.
And in the big scheme of things, you didn't go to school to be a bookkeeper.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Like I kind of look at it like doctors. Doctors went to school to be a doctor, not to be bookkeepers. So they hire bookkeepers to do that they don't know how to do, right? It's not their profession.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, so it's just a reframe in my brain insofar as like I need to like stop thinking about, but if I give up control of this, but you're saying it frees up time for me to do the things that I'm really good at, as opposed to sort of fiddling in the weeds of I'm going to save a little bit of money here. I'm actually not saving any money at all, because all that money in time, because it's a time or money balance. Like the time that I'm spending is money that I'm not making too. So,
and you're probably not paying that bookkeeper the same hourly wage you would pay yourself for the job that you're doing. Right? Yeah. So there is a return on the investment there.
Yeah. So even for like entrepreneurs, small business owners, that kind of thing, and then probably small business owners that maybe even have a small team, it's more efficient for them to actually outsource that. And so that's kind of from a virtual perspective, because you're not working, you're self-employed, then other people can sort of have you like a little piece here, and that's what you're sort of doing, right? It's not that, somebody doesn't have to employ you full time. They can just have you on a per project basis or an ongoing basis. Yeah,
exactly.
And so tell me some of the things that you do. We've had this discussion before. So you do social media management, and in addition to all sorts of other things. What other kind of things do you do?
So on the administrative side of things, I do a lot of strategic calendaring, inbox management, lots of admin type work, expenses, logistics, stuff like that. I also do a lot of governance work for different organizations, and that's a lot of ad hoc work because it's working with associations and agencies who need someone who is proficient at minute taking in order to meet their bylaw requirements. I also help governance organizations write bylaws and procedures for their boards. And so it's in AGMs and things like that. So that kind of is the governance side of things. And then communication side, social media management, helping people like you run events like this, right? If you need an extra set of hands to manage people coming in and going out, or you're doing things with breakout rooms and Zooms, that's me. I'm on the back end doing that.
Like
yeah, totally. And especially with the social media, some of my clients, they give me all the content and they just need me to schedule it in the scheduler or post it live so that we get a better return on the algorithm investment with the different social media platforms. But some of them are like, you know what? I think you know my voice and you know what I'm looking for. Can you do that for me? Absolutely. Absolutely. I can take that on. I can do the research and spend the time getting to know my client's voice and their tone. And then, yeah, here's a list of things I want to do next week. And, if they're okay with everything, a couple weeks later, they're like, don't even send it to me. Just do it. Unless you question yourself about, I don't think this is Leslie's voice, then I'll ask, right? You can always say no. Otherwise, just plod along managing the social media. The other thing that I do is I do a lot of project management and event management. And projects can be very small or very large. And event management is, something as small as the local Humane Society's annual general meeting. Something as small as that, built up to a global corporation who is, traded on the public stock exchange, and they are having an AGM. And I'm not the only one involved, but I'm part of that project. So it can be interesting. That's for sure.
And it can be intimidating. I remember back in the days when the first time I had to take minutes, I didn't know what, I was kind of a kid and I didn't know what to write down.
Oh.
Key points. How do I extrapolate this? How do I not look like an idiot from like, there's so much information that is being bantered around. How do I make sure that I distill that down into something that everybody makes sure they have all the takeaways? And so it's not just, and there's your phone ringing. Someone's calling to hire you. So that was like really intimidating for me, was to sort of take minutes and go like, was this what you were looking for? I don't even know. So having somebody with your experience from that perspective is really, really important, because you don't want to just bring in somebody who goes, I have no idea what the key points are here and how to make sure this is formatted properly and so forth. I thank my mom all the time because she made me take 4 years of coaching in high school.
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you just have to when it comes to minute taking, part of it is much like working with an executive. You have to get to know their tone and their voice, right? And so you need to do that with the association too. You need to get to know their tone and their voice. And if you're lucky, there's precedents and there's previous minutes that are, available for looking and viewing. And minutes are very different. A lot of times administrative professionals will get dragged into a meeting and someone will say, can you take minutes for us? When in reality, they don't want you to take minutes. They want you to create a summary of the meeting and qualify and quantify some action items with deadlines and responsibilities, which is very different from being at the board table and sitting, in the corner there, anxiously typing away on minutes that are a formal requirement based on bylaws from a legal precedence that you must have information kept that you had this meeting and this was a discussion. But like you said, it's not a Leslie said this, Jacqui said that. It's about what was the general conversation and what was the motion put forward, who firsted, who seconded, was it carried, was there further discussion amendments? They can be very, very formal. Especially if you have a large organization dealing with Robert's Rules of Order. And they could be a little bit more casual if you're using King and Kerr, which is used for smaller boards that are like 15 people or less. So a little less formality to them. A lot of it does come down to who's the recording secretary for the board. If the recording secretary wants them to be a little bit more casual, but still have all the stuff that is required by law, go for it. That's what they want. I'm just the person taking the information down.
Yeah, well, that sounds so complicated. It just, like for somebody, like I don't know half the terms that you're talking about, like the different board governance, this and this. So it is great to have somebody who has your specialization, that really understands all the nuances of that, and not just bringing somebody in who can type really fast. So, so how did you get involved in your career in the first place? What made you decide to go this route?
As luck would have it, and I think this is common for a lot of people, you go to university thinking you're going to go off and do X, and 2 years in, you realize you're not going to go that way, and you change and you go Y. Mine's kind of similar to that. My first year at York University, I was actually working towards my my BA, but also my B.Ed, so getting my education degree at the same time, so that after 4 years, I would already have my teacher certification, go off and teach. That was my goal. I was wanting to teach geography and physical education. After the first year of university, I was living at home. My parents left town. They moved out of town, out of Toronto, and said, are you coming? And I was like, no, I kind of like being here. And so I started living on my own. And as luck would have it, paying rent became a little bit higher of a priority than actually making my commitments at school. So I went from being full-time to part-time, which meant I couldn't keep doing my B.Ed part of my education. So I ended up flipping to being a part-time university student. It did take me 7 years to get my first BA, and it is one of the most expensive pieces of paper I own. But when I graduated, I can say that I didn't owe anybody any money for my education, but I owed a lot of people money on credit cards and stuff like that. But I didn't owe any money for my education. So that was a huge bit. But at that time, it meant that I had all these other part-time jobs. I worked in the hospitality industry at the front desk of a hotel, and then I did overnight clerking at that same hotel. I taught gymnastics. I worked in hospitality in the bar industry, bartending. And so I had a number of different areas. And one of those was, being at the hotel, I got to see what goes on behind the scenes and what went on in reservations and the front desk office. And I thought, this is a lot of organization and a lot of detail-oriented stuff, and I was good at it. So as life went on, the next thing you know, I found myself being an administrative professional in a small office in Mississauga, and the rest is history.
Wow. Oh gosh, I can't imagine. So it's so funny that you say that, because I love academia too. I mean, I teach part-time in the college, and I wanted to be a school teacher too. I didn't have the grades for it back in the day, because I had a little too much of this in university. But but now that I do, and I love academia, so it's like a part of me is like, oh, 7 years in university, and then the other part of me is like, as a lifelong learner, I'd be like, 7 years in university is kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool, because as you know, as we get older, we actually appreciate the education that, now that, the older that I get, the more I want to learn, as opposed to being forced to learn. Now I'm doing it on my own time. So, but you've got so many different accreditations, so you must be a lifelong learner too. But you must.
I am. I'm a huge proponent of career growth and development and stretching. The old saying is that if you're not uncomfortable, you're not learning. Right? You have to be uncomfortable for growth, especially in learning. So I like to be challenged. As a virtual assistant, I've come across clients who are like, oh, so do you know how to use, and I'll toss out, a software, Asana, or, for project management. And when I first started, I was like, oh, well, I'm not particularly adept at it, but give me 24 hours. Let me get back to you. Right? Because I found in my first 6 months as a VA, I was like, look at all this new software and all these great things. And I learned so much my first year by dealing with clients who were like, do you know how to use this? And I was like, I don't, but give me a couple days and let me come back to you and show you how good I am. Right? So it was a great learning opportunity, and still is, like you said, it's reading the Harvard Business Review, it's reading books, it's being on LinkedIn, it's being involved in keeping up with what's going on in not just North America, but around the world in a variety of industries. And that thirst for knowledge and education, right? I like you, I gotta learn.
Yeah, but it sounds to me, Jacqui, that you fully know that you are capable of doing whatever it is out there. And so many people, this is one of the other reason why I sort of started this chat, was because so many people hold themselves back. I can't, I don't know if I could, I don't know how to use this, I'm afraid of, and you're just like, give me you're like eager to tackle it. It sounds to me like you're like, there's no in your vocabulary. They're like, can you do this? And you're like, yep.
I try hard not to say no, but at the same time, like we said, like it's about moving forward. And especially when it comes to your career, if things aren't changing in life in general, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So if you choose to not take that course, read that book, have that hard conversation, the things that you aren't happy with will never change, right? It's like never asking your parents for an extra half hour on your curfew as a kid, right? If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I love that so much. And I don't know, my brain kind of goes into, only because that's where we met, was Amy's Administrative Professionals Conference, which is just this. And actually, I'm going to just give her a little bit of a shout out, only because she's starting up, because of thankfully our numbers are coming down with COVID. And so I'm going to give her a little bit of a plug here, that the Administrative Professional Conference is happening in September. And I'm going to be speaking at it again, which I'm so excited. It is one of my favorite conferences in the whole world, Jacqui, because Amy makes it it's just so fun. And the people there, I just find that administrative professionals, it's like we all I don't consider myself a professional or an administrative professional anymore. But I think I'm still a part of the club. I've been there.
Once an admin, always an admin, really.
It's like so much fun. It is so much fun, that conference. It just seems like everybody wants to elevate each other up. I mean, that just the mindset and the environment, the people there, everybody's there to help each other. And I think it's just all a whole bunch. It's a huge room of people pleasers that are all so excited to get out and meet other people pleasers too. Because I think you have to have that mindset too, to be actually almost every profession that I've talked to, most people are pretty much like, I love helping others. Yeah. When I ask people, why do you do what you do? So I guess that was my next question on the list, is, so what makes you passionate and driven to do what you do?
It is that helping others, and it's wanting to get that fulfillment from helping others. And like we said at the beginning, many admins are behind the curtain, pulling the strings and just making everything look great. And so sometimes it's I don't know, it's nice to have that opportunity to kind of be like, hey, I really am good at what I do, and I really am good at this one thing or good for another thing. And it's knowing that and having others help you see that too. Going to conferences, meeting people, networking. People often say, so how do you find your first client as a virtual assistant? And I said, well, it was pretty easy for me. I said, I have a decent network of a variety of contacts on LinkedIn. And when I decided I was going to be a VA, I started talking about it a year before I actually did it. And that gave me the time to build relationships with people. And when I was ready, I had 3 people going, so are you really going to do it? Are you really going to do it? Yeah, sign me up. Sign me up. Can I get you a couple hours a week? And I was like, really? Really, me? Like, so it was a process of getting to, but if you don't talk about it, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And just putting one step in front of the other, like one foot in front of the other. And I think most of us do sell ourselves short, that we think that we can't for whatever reason. For whatever reason, I can't do that, or I won't be able to do that. And it's really, of course you can. Having a 14-year-old boy, that's my whole, I'm just like that mom who's like, of course you can do this. And now, sadly, he's mirroring these things back to me when I have these when I have these like limiting beliefs of myself. He'll be like, well, Mom, you're always telling me that I can do anything, so of course you can do it. I'm like, well, here's when the student becomes the teacher.
I'm hopeful that's refreshing, right?
It is.
That you've brought your son up to a certain stage and age where he recognizes that you can benefit from this good, self-talk too, and gives it back to you. That must be so refreshing and so rewarding.
I just keep thinking, I don't realize that he's talking back to me in the same language that I'm talking to him in. I just think he's a wise old sage at the age of 14. I'm like, wow, you're really smart for 14. Not realizing that he's just mirroring back the same information that I've been saying to him. So, but it's all a work in progress. And so we're all a work in progress. We're progress. Yeah, that's we're all just continuing on this journey to success. And I think, you and I, and this is sort of pivoting into even your non-working stuff, which is your motocross. So you must just love, you must be an adrenaline junkie. You just love, like, you're a motocross sport lover, right? Isn't that's
so? Motorsports in general. I think it all started when I was young. My dad, back in the day, used to work for Goodyear Canada, and as a family, we used to go out to the stock car races at Cayuga Raceway. So I was always interested in cars and speed, even as a kid. And my dad used to fix up old cars back in the day, and so I learned the difference between a Phillips and a Robertson head, and stuff like that. But it happened when I was in my teens, and I met a young gentleman. We were in our late teens, and he rode a motorcycle, and we started dating, and he took me out, and it was like, oh my God, I'm in love. And it wasn't the guy who was driving, it was being on a motorcycle. I was like, oh my God. Well, and lovely guy, the whole 9 yards. But moved on in life, and a couple years later, when my family left the Toronto area, I didn't have transportation. And yes, Toronto transportation is very good, but I worked 3 to 5 jobs depending on what time of year it was, and overnights, and then getting out to school up at York University. And transit back then wasn't quite as good as it is now. So
York's not easy to get to.
No, it's not. I couldn't afford a car. So I got my dad to co-sign a loan so that I could get a motorcycle. And of course, my dad, God love my father, he was like, my daughter wants a bike. Yes, he was so excited, right? And then, my mom and my stepmother were like, tell me this is a phase. When's it over? She's not really going to do this, is she?
I'd be dying. I'd be like, oh my God.
I really did it. It's been over 30 years of street riding now. And I still ride, I guess you'd call it a sport bike. It is 17 years old, but it's still a sport bike. I don't get as much time on the street as I want, but it's still there for me. But then about 17 years ago, when I moved out of Toronto to Belleville, I'd been coming out to this area to go to Shannonville Motorsports Park, which is about 15 kilometers from where I live, to be involved with motorcycle racing. And I had a friend who was racing, and he dragged me at the time. I was still in Toronto, and he's like, so you want to come to the racetrack on the weekend? I was like, yeah. He's like, so we're leaving Sunday morning at 5 o'clock. And I was like, 5 o'clock? Really? Well, by the time all was said and done on that Sunday, at the end of the day, driving home, he's like, so what do you think? And I was like, when can I come back? It was like giving a 2-year-old sugar. Gimme, 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 right? I want more. I was on this high, and one thing led to another, and I got my competitive road racing license as an amateur. I competed a few times over the years. In the process, met my significant other who's involved with motorcycle racing, among other things, and started helping out at the organizational level. And so now, 17 years later, I participate with 3 different racing organizations this year: the Canadian Superbike Series, the Vintage Road Racing Association, and the Pro 6 GP Road Race Series. And I do everything from online registration, in-person registration, timing and scoring. And I also do what's called pre and post tech support. And that has nothing to do with computers, if you can believe it. It's actually teching the motorcycles prior to them racing and then after the racing. Do they have the right, air filter involved? Are the stickers in the right place? Does it pass the dyno jet test and has enough horsepower but not too much? Does it meet the weight category? Things like that. So they're totally interesting. And yeah, the income doesn't help me pay my mortgage, but in the big scheme of things, I come away from a 12-hour day outside at the racetrack with the biggest smile on my face. Yeah. It's totally energizing. If I could actually make a living just doing that, that's probably what I would do.
I'm doing sort of working in that industry specifically. Yeah. Like I've had some talks with a few different companies. I mean, yes, it would be great to work for a motorcycle manufacturer, whether that be Kawasaki or Honda or Harley Davidson, for goodness sakes. Mm-hmm. But there's so many niche companies and industries that are attached to the motorcycle community, whether it be, certain companies that just make exhaust systems, or certain companies just focus on shocks or windscreens and, bodywork and things. Like, it's amazing when you finally get into an industry to realize all these other pieces that are attached to it. So it's pretty amazing. But for me right now, I'm hopeful with COVID, lifting. We're on schedule for actual competitive racing in 2 weeks up at Kawabogie Motorsports Park for the Canadian Superbike Series first round for this year. And I'll be looking after their timing and scoring. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So anything outdoors, we certainly feel a lot more comfortable with that for sure. Yeah. I love that you have this passion towards it. And I wonder, sort of in a way, like your sense of adventure and your, like, the adrenaline junkie in you is kind of the same thing you bring to the admin professional world, insofar as I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to do this yet, and I'm going to figure it out. It's kind of like that adrenaline junkie part of you too. And I know, and I know event management, which is a part of what you do as well, that producing. And I know from Amy's role, it's like, I mean, it's just, I couldn't do what Amy does. I couldn't do the admin. Yeah. I had, in a former life, my very first foray into entrepreneurship, I had a little bit of an event management company. It was I wasn't going to get into it. It was like, I called it diaper disco. And I used to rent out a nightclub out in Durham region and turn it into a daytime disco for kids under the age of 12 and their parents. It was like
wow.
Yeah. And I realized how much work it is to go into event management. I white knuckled it the entire time. I love adrenaline. I love adrenaline to a certain extent, but I didn't love it from an event management standpoint. Yeah. Like, so many moving parts, and just it didn't infuse me. It actually made me go, oh, this is terrifying.
There's a difference between good pressure to achieve the success and get to that next level versus the, oh my God, what am I doing?
I don't like any of this. And my son was only little at the time. And I remember him like, Mommy, this is too loud. Like, the music was too loud. And I was like, what am I doing here? I thought he was going to have fun. This was going to be. So anyway, he hated all of it. So that didn't last very long, but it got me sort of involved in being an entrepreneur and being self-employed. And actually, it was really because of that event that I started into Punch Media, because I was able to get 350 people out to those events on a shoestring. Like, it was not, I had no money. I was just sort of doing this on the fly. And not only did I find out about the entrepreneurship program that I ended up starting Punch Media with, but realizing the power of social media and to gather people together. And that was in 2008, I think.
Wow.
2008.
How times have changed.
I know. It was only Facebook and Twitter back then too, to get people together. And now it's like, gosh, when I teach social media, it was the top 2, then it was the top 5. And so you, as a part of one of your roles, is that you're managing these social media accounts for organizations. Does it get to be overwhelmed? Because I don't even do this anymore, because it's too overwhelming for me to manage. Like, how do you stay on top of all these different channels? Are you staying on top of all the different channels?
You know, I'll admit I don't stay on top of all the channels. I stay on top of the channels that my clients need at that time. So about 2 years ago, I started with supporting a world famous trainer, speaker, author. You know, when I first started, it was like, okay, so where is your audience? And she was like, you know what? The majority of my audience is on LinkedIn, is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I'm like, okay, so let's figure out what we need to do to cross post and get those, you know, those posts to be the most interactive and garner the most bang for your buck, as it were. But, you know, I haven't had a client yet who's like, oh, I live on TikTok. And I'm like, okay, well then I know how it works. I know how to use it. I don't need to be this proficient at it because I don't have someone who's using it just yet. I have a couple of other clients who are like, you know, it's all about LinkedIn. I don't want to do Facebook. It's too social. I want to stay on the professional networking site, and this is what I'm looking for. Okay, so let's figure out how to get you, you know, your best return on the investment with me and make it work for you.
Yeah, which is 100%. So you're part marketer, you're strategist, marketer, event planner. Like, how many hats does Jacqui wear?
There are a lot of hats, and at times we, as admins, we juggle a lot of balls, but yeah, we wear a lot of different hats. And social media right now is a big one because there are so many different platforms where you can be proficient at. And sometimes it's proficient at posting to garner the most likes and the most shares and the most involved content. And then the other is research for that posting is a completely different thing because somebody has to find all this stuff, right? Like you don't just start a business and all of a sudden they give you a little suitcase and so here's all the stuff you're going to post on social media your first year, right? Somebody has to actually find that and vet it, right? Is it true? Is it good? Is the source quoted accurate? Is it real? Right? So yeah, it's a huge thing for virtual assistants right now is being able to do that. But having your niche and being able to succeed on the platform that your client wants, and then having the courage to say to that client, you know, this has come along. The latest one has been Clubhouse. To get online and speak with people on Clubhouse more casually. And it's like, okay, so is there value in moving to that? What kind of value can we get? So to help them, if it's necessary, move to that and see the value in it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love it. And so I guess maybe even another misconception now that you're saying what you're saying, I think a lot of people wouldn't recognize that the value that you're bringing. I mean, you're asking those tough strategic questions of what's the return on investment, which has always been the number one question I've been asked since I started teaching social media. What's the ROI? So you're even asking those tough questions of, is this a valuable use of your time? Is this where your target audience is? And I think the other misconception that I have, and I don't know if you get this, you probably don't get this from your clients the same way that I get the same question is, and I thought, this is expensive to invest in. I thought social media was free. And I'm like, oh yeah, so all of that time behind the scene, I don't mean to sound like a negative Nelly, but like to your point, all the research behind it's not just simply scheduling random things and posting them just to make noise. That research time takes a lot of time, which is why I don't do account management. It's a lot of time that goes behind the scenes. Do you ever get that pushback of people going like, how much does it cost for account management like that?
Yeah, you know, as a virtual admin, you know, it was really hard at first to understand my value when it came down to I'm going to work so many hours and this is how much I want to charge for it. Or some clients want, you know, an hourly fee based on whether it's governance or whether it's admin or event planning. Other people want project costs, right? So I quite often I'll quote whatever they want based on, you know, how I feel about it. But it's really hard at first to make sure that you're getting the right value for your time. You know, so often, so many people think, oh, well, you know, it's dirt cheap. And it's like, okay, well, you can pay somebody $15 an hour to do this. And it may take them 3 hours to do it. But you can pay me $25 and I'll have it done in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's understanding that value for what you're being asked to do and not being afraid to ask for it. You know, I quite often look at hiring for VA services. You know, just because you when you go into a store and the price tag says that something's, $39.99, you don't often go up to the cash and say, so can I pay you $29 for this?
Yeah.
You don't often do that unless there's a snag or something's wrong with it. You'll ask for a discount. But when you're your own sole proprietor and you're running a business, you really do negotiate. When you put out, a request for proposal and people come back with options for you and quotes, there's nothing wrong with going back to the person you think will be great for it and saying, you know what, this is just outside my budget. Is there anything you can do for me? So as a VA, I have to be expected and prepared for someone to come back to me and say, oh, really? That much? How much should you think it would cost? How much is your budget? What is your budget? Do you want to change the scope of what you're looking to have done or the detailed responsibilities? And how can I help make it successful for you, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's probably like the hardest thing is the money side of things. Because like you said, everybody figures social media is free, right? Well, okay, the platforms can be free depending on how you use them, but somebody's got to figure out what to post, right?
Yeah, 100%. As Steve Jones posted in there, people aren't necessarily seeing that fee as an investment, that's absolutely true. And I had the same thing as I was talking a few weeks ago with a friend of mine who used to create wedding invitations. And I remember having that misconception of thinking like, well, how much are wedding invitations? Like, this is a
lot. They're very expensive.
Very expensive. And then like Laura had to sit down with me and she was like, well, first of all, I have X number of years experience as a designer. Number two, I also, I'm creating this from scratch, and the amount of time that it takes and the paper costs and when you start to ladder all those things up and add them up, you're like, oh yeah, I never really realized it. We just have this mindset like, oh, shouldn't it be like a few dollars? Isn't social media free? Shouldn't I just be able to throw $100 at somebody and make sure that all this magic is going to happen? It just doesn't happen that way. There's just a lot of things that go behind the scenes. The same thing with photographers. It's not just showing up with a camera. I mean, we all carry these things in our pocket, but exactly. Camera doesn't necessarily make them a professional photographer. And the time that goes into, like whether they're just moving the lighting around, all these little different nuanced things. Again, most of the time it's unseen stuff because people like yourself make it look so easy that they think, well, isn't it just easy to do this, right? Yeah. So there's a lot more to it, and I just love that you had this like strategic approach to all of it. It isn't just simply you just plugging and playing. That you're putting a lot of, and you're pushing back on your clients to ask them like, really, like, question yourself, and sometimes it is having another set of eyes to have that objective point of view from that perspective. So do you see people making certain mistakes online? Probably like not having a good strategy is probably number one, right? Or do you see other things that people are doing wrong that they really should be thinking about? Is there,
when it comes to social media, quite often, and it's really been the last, probably I would say 5 years, social media has really become politically charged, and people are very comfortable about sharing their political opinions about what is right and what is wrong, whether it's Black Lives Matter, or the elections the last few years in the US. And from my perspective, I often say to people, especially as a solopreneur, as someone who's self-employed, my image is my brand. I quite often will see things on social media and I think, oh, I want to comment on that. I'm like, what does that look like? What is that going to look like to a prospective client, right? When I worked years ago in the corporate world and I worked in healthcare for the provincial government, we often would say to people when, about things you put in writing, right? Your emails and things, because they could all be taken out of context, and they can be requested through the Freedom of Information request process. And we would say, what does that look like on the headline at the local newspaper the next week, right? Are you prepared to have that taken out of your email and posted in the public paper for somebody to read? It's like, oh, maybe not. So it kind of helps. It's like typing out that feverish email to someone who you're not happy with and pausing, waiting 24 hours, and then you read it the next day and you go, oh, that's a little harsh. Yeah, I probably shouldn't send that. So you get that second guess, that, sober second thought, as they call it, right? There isn't a lot of sober second thought going on in social media. And some people say things that they do regret later, and other people say things and they're like, I don't care, this is me, take me as I am. So it's I think that as a VA, if I'm speaking for someone else on social media and I'm comfortable with their tone and their language, I would never do anything to possibly ruin their brand or mine, being that they've hired me to do that. I think that's a recipe for disaster. And just myself personally, I try to keep things separate. I look at Facebook and Instagram for me are social. LinkedIn is professional networking. That's where I'm keeping in touch with people from a business perspective. And Facebook and Instagram, that's my social side of the fence, and it's a little bit more casual. But yeah, there's lots of opportunities for people to make mistakes. And I think we've heard about, a few of them where people have been fired and students have been expelled. And, it's great to have a voice and have an opinion. Sometimes I think we need to have that sober second thought to make sure that we're not going to jeopardize ourselves or anyone else in the process, right? And kind of like the doctor mantra, right? Do no harm.
Right. 100%. You could teach my class, because you're saying you're saying all the same stuff that I totally and firmly believe in. Because as somebody said to me once, the best thing about social media is that everybody's got a voice, and the worst thing about social media is that everybody has a voice. Yep. And so I haven't heard of that term, sober second thought. To me, common sense isn't always common sense, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not as common as it was just 20 years ago. For those of us that are aging, right? It just doesn't seem as common anymore.
It doesn't. I think there's a disconnect psychologically between putting things out into what we perceive, I think, psychologically as the ether. Like if I just rant about something online, it really, it's getting off of my chest and putting it out there, but not realizing the consequences of how the other person is going to see that. And I have a client recently who had that same sort of situation, insofar as I created a social media policy for them and a crisis management plan for them. And after doing a training, one of the employees had posted, but they ranted online, but they weren't even ranting about themselves. They were ranting about something that happened to their wife. And so, but in the context of what it looked like he was ranting about something that was going on. And
right.
The marketing manager had to call, or marketing director had to call and say, like, what is this about? Are you guys upset? Like, are you upset with the company? Like, oh, no, this isn't well, yeah. But think about the context of how other people are perceiving this. And the same thing, like posting things like, cartoon pictures up on LinkedIn, and they're not in the right context, and posting things about, I don't know. To me, I'm a bit of a purist too. I think keep things professional on LinkedIn and see.
Yeah, like I'm all for the cat mimes and the cartoons on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. And I really don't want to see those on LinkedIn. Like I'm okay with some happy birthday stuff and, anniversaries and things like that, for work anniversaries and stuff, or new jobs and things, and people get excited. But social media has changed a lot in the last 10 years in particular, and it's become very apparent that it's not just the words, but it's the images that you use. And it's a well-known fact that an image garners more attention than the words do that are attached to it. So choosing the image word context of picking a picture for the background and then overlaying it with text garners you more attention than just the text itself. What gets you even more attention is a quick, less than 30-second video that does exactly the same thing, right? Because people are into that. What can I instantaneously get that gives me information so that I can move on to the next thing? Reading a screen full of information, nobody does that anymore, right? If you open an email even, and it fills your whole 24-inch screen, you start reading it and you go, okay, yeah, close, mark unread. I'll read that later. Because it's just like, no, next.
And our brains actually, our attention span is less than a goldfish now. Like the human attention span is less than 9 seconds, which is horrifying. And we're having to parse down, even education needs to be parsed down into 5-10 minute increments, because 20 minutes is too long for people, which is, especially during the pandemic, I think almost all of us have been sort of faced with the same thing. It's like, I know I want to learn, I want to go on and I want to learn something. I don't have the bandwidth or the energy for that right now. And it's just getting tougher and tougher to keep people entertained, engaged. online for sure.
Well, and engage this way, right? Like just 5 years ago, doing things like this, people still enjoyed them and found them exciting and captivating. And now that we've all spent a year and a half staring at cameras and, Teams messaging or Sync or, the instant messaging, it's like, okay, I'm done. My stepmother's family does trivia every 2 weeks on a Thursday evening as a family. Wait for the younger kids to go to bed and the adults get on and we do a Zoom, we do family trivia. And there are Thursdays where I'm like, I send a little note in, thanks, guys. I've had 8 Zooms today. I'm done. Like, I am so tired of sitting in my chair and staring at a camera. Have a great time. Talk to you next week.
Right. Yeah. Unlike you, though, Amy and Steve are my friends that we play trivia night every second Friday, and we're playing this week, and we're like, yeah, you're right. The kids can't be around for it because it gets a little rowdy.
By the way, I want to call out Steve's comment. I really like Steve's comment about the experience and expertise in having people understand that the cost for your services comes with all those things, the problem solving, the supporting, and they are paying for your expertise, right? I'm not the age I am, and I'm not doing what I do at the level I'm doing it because I started yesterday. I'm doing it because I have years of experience and, have my certificates and my credentials to say to people, yes, this is really what I do for a living. It's not a job. I'm not going to go off and change careers next week. This is what I do. So yeah, bang on, Steve.
100%. And sometimes that is exactly what I have to mirror back. And it's the one thing that I've learned, because I've been, in my own business too for 10 years, is that when people sort of challenge me on like, oh, you charge that? And the same, to your point, I go, yeah, I've had 20 plus years in sales and marketing experience. I've, and sometimes it's almost just even me saying it to myself, not just saying it to them, because sometimes if it is a price thing, they can find someone else that is going to fit within the bandwidth of whatever their price is. But I'm better. I'm still working on it. I'm better at owning value.
I think we all work on that one. I think that's probably one of the hugest things for people is being able to recognize their value and feel comfortable to say, yes, I do charge $50 an hour for that, plus expenses, right? Like to be able to have that confidence and that comfort level. And also if you're negotiating with someone, what your bottom threshold is, when the point is going to be, what, I'm terribly sorry, but I can't do that for you at that level and still pay my mortgage next week. Yeah. We all have bills to pay. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it is that point of knowing the value of the years of experience and how long it's going to take you to do that project as well. Because people, to like the same thing about creating social media campaigns, my writing of the LinkedIn profiles takes X number of hours to actually do it, to fulfill it. It's not just sort of like, oh, we had this conversation and then I just bang it out. It's just like it takes hours of research, and anyway, so I don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But
but no, you're totally right. People get scared by price tags sometimes, but it's like that for big companies too. Big companies put out requests for proposals or requests for services, and companies bid on them based on what it's going to cost them to provide that service or product or end state. And there's always a negotiation process where the scope changes and requirements. Yes, you can have a lawyer at this many hours costing this much money, or you get a paralegal at this many hours, things like that, right? It all changes, but at some point in time, there's a bottom line where you're like, you know what? If we don't make this much money, I can't pay my staff.
Right.
I can't pay that other person. Like it's just not worth it.
Yeah, can't even keep the lights on for that rate. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Awesome. I can't believe we're out of time already. This is
my gosh, an hour. Where did it go?
It just flew by. So do you have, I typically like to ask everybody if there's any sort of like mantra, belief, a motivational phrase that you might have. Do you have anything, any sort of last words to share with?
Leslie, you started with it, and it's something, we talked about, when you're inside the jar, you can't read the label. And I can't tell you how often in the last couple of years, I have said to people, I'm a jar of honey, I know that I'm sweet and I'm natural because of honeybees. I said, but what I don't see is the label that's on the outside that says that, the beekeepers, are environmentally friendly and they're doing this and this is local. It's 5 kilometers from home. And by the way, here's a recipe on the back of the label. This is how diverse I am, right? And you can't just, you don't just put me in coffee or tea. Guess what? You can put me in cookie recipes and substitute me for sugar and stuff like that, right? I quite often I actually have it on a sticky note on the bottom of my other monitor right here. That's how much I like it. And just to say to people, yeah, like there is more to you than you think. And a lot of times it's the person you're talking to that comes back and says, actually, you do that, or you are good at that. Did you know you did that? Like in a good way, right? And I'll admit, sometimes it takes standing in front of the mirror and going, you can do this.
I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me, right? The Stuart Small. I love
exactly.
that. Yeah, 100%, because I agree with you that, and oftentimes, probably you, like I do, I get to see other people from that perspective. And I'm sure that you, behind the scenes, is the same thing. You get to see the value that other people bring. And sometimes, as my friend Richard Gouder would do this to me, Leslie, everything that you go out has to come back in. Like you would do, like, you have to like listen to what you're saying. So I love that you, all the, like, it just, to me, you exude somebody who really knows your value. I love that you own your value and that you know the value that you're bringing to the table. And so how can people get a hold of you? How can people reach you if they want more information about what you do?
So LinkedIn is usually the best way. My website's been on hold for a couple months. My clients have got me really busy. I've had to kind of not finish the website. And it's just the final touches, right? Making sure the fonts are all consistent and the colors and all that. So I'm hopeful to get that done. But for me, it's on LinkedIn. Just look me up on LinkedIn and you can find me. If you want to connect on social media for, motorcycle racing stuff, I spend a lot of time on social media talking about that. But yeah, my LinkedIn account has my email address so people can get to me. And I've had quite a bit of interest the last couple of months from potential clients reaching out, mostly through referrals. And I'm full. But even though I'm full, it's not a no, I can't help you, I'm really sorry about that. So I don't have the bandwidth, but how can I help you? So let's talk about what your requirements are and what you might need. And maybe I can share a post in some of the LinkedIn groups I'm in for administrative professionals. And I can, you can share it on LinkedIn from your own business and then let me share it with another comment to help drive interest in helping somebody else get a job. Yeah. Right? Like I'm happy that I have the success I'm having, but I'm happiest when I'm helping others find that success and achievement too, right? Whether it's finding the right admin support for the client or finding the right job for the admin to get into a company, right? I love to see others succeed. So always happy to offer an ear, have a conversation, talk to someone about how do I become a VA? What should I do first? Absolutely.
Yeah,
find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best.
Yeah, I'm like you. I think when we help each other in our roles, and you probably have a network of a whole network of other administrative professionals as well. And even though we're sort of in the same competitive landscape, I see it as I collaborate with my competitors all the time because they're not my competitors. They're actually everybody's got their own race to run. Just because if they're successful doesn't invalidate the success I have, and I like to spread the wealth around too, just like you. So.
Well, exactly. I mean, if I can help somebody find a contract or a role or someone to support them, whether it's full-time or part-time or contract basis, that's a win for me as well as other people, which is really important. But in the big scheme of things, what have I done for me as an admin? Yeah, it gives me that warm feeling. I feel good about it, but it's helped me maintain my brand. Right? It's helped me be the person that people can come to and say, can you help me with this? I've got a question. It's, I don't know, just keep paying it forward. Just keep paying it forward. I guess I had that capability. People did that for me in the past. So all I can do is keep doing it.
I love it. So have so much fun in your race and the race. I don't know how to describe it, but have fun.
I'll be at a racetrack. There'll be lots of, racing fuel and rubber and tires and just, yeah. Hopefully it won't be quite so hot in Ontario, but yeah, I'm excited to be around a really great group of enthusiastic people with the Canadian Superbike Racing Series. And, I will have 2 shots by then, and I'm going to hug anybody that wants it.
That'll be this is the year of the hugs, I think, for sure. I think everybody's excited to get back to that. So awesome. Thank you again, Jacqui, for just taking the time to chat with me today. It's been enlightening. I've learned a lot more. And even though you and I've known each other for a while and I thought I knew a lot about what you did, I now know so much more. So, if anybody's watching the post video of this, please let us know your greatest takeaway, the biggest aha. Of course, feel free to reach out to Jacqui for any kind of questions you have. And I guess we'll just catch people next time. And again, thanks so much, Jacqui. And
thank you, Leslie. It's been great. It's so nice to connect with people this way and have these kind of conversations that, like you said, let's pay it forward and help somebody else.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. Thank you so much.
And the whole admin profession, I just bring it a circle back to Amy and that conference and getting everybody and laddering everybody up. So awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye for now.